Okay, so from what you've told me and some of the forms that you filled out, you actually do meet the requirements for a diagnosis of PTSD. And you also have some depressive symptoms as well. So I'm going to go over each one with you together, and we'll determine together what makes the most sense for you. You know, how you can balance out what works the most effectively and the quickest, also with some of your concerns that you have about your job. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. So you and I discussed that there are many dimensions to PTSD and the types of symptoms that you had. There's biological, there's social, psychological, as well as spiritual for people. And also we talked about the fact that PTSD, just like other types of physical injuries, can be effectively treated, and people do recover when they go to treatment.
That's good to know. Figured it was something I was going to have to, deal with the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's actually the way a lot of people feel about it. And most people don't realize that over the last decade there have been a lot of advances in treatment of PTSD, so there's some really good effective treatments.
Great.
Okay. For service members and veterans with PTSD, you've got a little bit of a different picture. There are some common traits that distinguish you from other civilian populations. So for instance, you've got the fact that the military culture itself makes you more hard on yourself, you demand more from yourself. You've got the fact that the types of physical and psychological injuries that you suffered can have a direct impact on your job. That can be really challenging. And you've also got the fact that you hold yourself to really high standards and you demand a lot from yourself. So how that all adds up for me is that I see when I have veterans coming into my office, generally they've tried everything that they can to try to help themselves get better before they would take the step of coming into a mental health professional. And they also, because of that, tend to be suffering more than civilians per se. They try as hard as they can not to take that step. Yeah. So it can be really challenging.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to admit to yourself that you got to see a shrink.
Yeah, and you do actually have a lot of strengths, like I've seen in a lot of veterans that I've worked with. You care about your family a lot. You care about your job a lot. You're probably considered the strong one in most of the circles that you run in. You're the one that people come to for help, that type of thing. You also have a lot of dedication to your work, and you're willing to work hard to meet your goals. So we have a lot to work with to make this treatment much more effective.
Good.
You're also more likely to have a combination of PTSD and traumatic brain injury. You talked about having a brain and head and neck injury. What I've seen is that oftentimes there's a lot of overlap between PTSD and traumatic brain injury in the symptoms, but you actually have unique features of each. So for TBI, you've got dizziness and headaches. We don't usually see that with PTSD. And with PTSD, you've got the nightmares. So you don't generally see that with TBI. So you've got a combination of both, which can make it kind of a complicated picture.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not common knowledge, and so because it's complex, what I would recommend is that you get a full polytrauma evaluation. And we're lucky we have a local polytrauma rehabilitation center, or PRC, that we can refer you to. They do great work, so I can get you connected with them.
Great.
Okay.
I guess I thought the TBI had already been dealt with, but now that I think about it, I didn't have the dizziness or the headaches before the neck and head trauma, so makes sense. I just, it can't cut in too much to my work schedule.
Yeah, I can understand your concern about that. So what I would suggest is that you and I call them today and find out what it entails to come in for a full eval and see what it, what it means in terms of your time. But I really would strongly recommend that you follow through if you can, because until we figure out how the TBI and PTSD interact, it's going to be hard to really move forward effectively. I think it can make a big difference.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll learn more about it and then figure out how it can work with my work shifts.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. So once we've figured out what is going on with the TBI and PTSD, I think one of the options that we might want to consider is medications. They've been shown to be really effective with both depression and PTSD. They can help you with some of your other symptoms as well. They act relatively quickly, and you don't necessarily have to take a lot of time off of work in order to work with the medications and have them help you out. So I would consider that to be one of our potential options for treatment for you. Does that sound okay for you?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. Another thing that I was thinking as you were speaking that would be very helpful for you is that we have a very great peer support team here that meets in the evenings. And a lot of the veterans that I've worked with said it's been really helpful for them to meet with other veterans, people who understand them, people who they can vent and blow off steam with, and you start to feel like you're part of the culture again, that you understand and you feel like you fit in. And they've just felt like it was really helpful for them. Does that sound like it would be something you would be interested in?
Yeah, I really miss my guys, so it'd be good to be able to, talk to someone who I can relate to.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. The other strong piece that I heard as you and I were talking earlier is that you care a lot about your wife and your child. And I really think it would be a good idea to include your wife in the polytrauma eval, as well as having her come in here, meet with us, so she can tell us about her concerns, both of us, and we can talk to her about what we want to be doing in treatment. She get a better picture of what's going to be coming ahead.
Yeah. She's always been the smarter of the two of us, so, and she could probably keep track of everything better.
That sounds great. Yeah, I've seen that to be the case. A lot of times spouses can really track things better, and they are really interested. It sounds like she would be. And I have some really great materials here. I've got some really nice fact sheets that are related to post-traumatic stress disorder and some of the other symptoms that you've been having. There's also a really great list here with websites that are self-help websites for veterans and family members as well. So they're particularly good when you're in a situation where you can't get off work, but you want to kind of work on things. You want some help with some of the issues that you've been having. You can work on it on your own. And your wife can as well. So I'll give these to you, and you can take those and talk them over with your wife.
Okay.
Okay. I know it sounds like a lot of stuff, and I want you to know that we don't have to do it all at once, right? I've written it out here for you to take home. You can talk it over with your wife, and then you and I could figure out together which options work the best moving forward, okay? One of the things that I found is most helpful is that we tailor the treatment to you and your concerns and your wife's concerns. We do it in such a way that it works for you. So for instance, if there are times when you're really busy and you don't have time to come in that week, we could talk on the phone, and we could have emails, that type of thing. We could also teach you strategies that you could use on your own, and maybe your wife could even help you in between our sessions. So you could be working on things, and then when you and I see each other, we'll reinforce that, okay? My goal really is to try to get you the treatment that you need to manage some of the symptoms right away. And then once we figure out what's going on with the TBI and PTSD, you're probably going to have to talk about some of the things you don't want to talk about, because we found that that's actually the most effective treatment in some ways for some of the symptoms that you've been having, like nightmares. However, I would want to do it in such a way that it's at a pace that you feel comfortable with, and you and I can work that out together and figure out what makes the most sense for you. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I can handle that.
Okay, great. So this has been a long session. Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay,
No.
great. I appreciate your hanging in there with me. I know it's a lot to go over in one day. And what I would suggest we do now is we schedule a time to meet. You take those materials home and that list home, talk it over with your wife, and then you and I will meet in a week or two. Does that sound good to you?
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, too. I really appreciate your coming in. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah.